as Karen's heels echoed menacingly towards me. The fate of my beloved Bella hung in the balance: would I cower or fight back? The early evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange hue across my driveway, as I stood admiring my dog's quirky antics. Bella, my rescue pup with her off-kilter ears and bright green collar, darted back and forth, chasing after a few stray leaves dancing in the gentle breeze. I couldn't help but chuckle at her absurdity. She had a knack for turning the simplest things into a delightful show. But my laughter faded into an uneasy silence as the unmistakable sound of heels clacked sharply against the pavement behind me. As I turned, there she was, Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA board, striding toward me with an expression that could curdle milk. Her chunky, middle-aged frame was wrapped in a pastel blazer that matched her bleached blonde hair, simultaneously commanding and condescending. Beneath her stern features lurked an unmistakable bitterness that had earned her a reputation in the neighborhood. The curl of her lip suggested that she relished her role as our local enforcer of civic etiquette, regardless of how badly it rubbed the rest of us the wrong way. "Do you really think a mutt like that belongs in our neighborhood?" she sneered, her tone sharp like a blade. I felt my stomach twist as I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. It wasn't just a comment. It was an accusation and a declaration of war all in one. Bella, blissfully ignorant, continued her escapade, leaping and bounding among the fallen leaves, reveling in her freedom, while her owner stood there crushed under the weight of Karen's disdain. "Excuse me?" I stammered, the disbelief in my voice barely masking my rising anger. It felt like I was struck by a poorly thrown punch. How could anyone be so brazen in their cruelty? It wasn't just my dog she had insulted. It was me, and everything that came with the bond I shared with Bella. My heart raced as I contemplated the confrontation brewing between us. "That dog is a threat to the community image we all cherish," she continued, her voice rising, echoing down the street. "You know the bylaws state that all pets must be of purebred stock, right? It's common sense." I felt my face flushing with heat as I absorbed her words. The absurdity of her argument struck me. This was an animal that had already been through the roughest of paths, a creature rescued from abandonment, finally finding a loving home. I didn't need Karen to educate me about community bylaws when Bella had already brought so much joy into our lives. I glanced toward my neighbors, hoping to see even one of them in support. What I found instead was a judgmental silence, the kind that bred isolation, making me feel more alone than ever. Surely, they couldn't agree with Karen. Yet, there they stood, peeking through their curtains, absorbed in their own dramas, unwilling to lend their voices to my cause. In a neighborhood where appearances were everything, it seemed they preferred to watch rather than participate, a chorus of cowardice. Taking a breath to regain my composure, I stepped forward. "Bella is not just a dog. She deserves to be here, just like all of us do," I said, finding a steadiness in my voice I didn't feel. My heart raced as I spoke, and part of me wished I'd just turned the other way, but I couldn't allow her to reduce Bella to just another point in a bylaw argument. With a self-satisfied smirk, Karen seemed to enjoy the control she had over the situation. "Let's see what the community thinks about your dog, shall we?" she challenged, tapping her smartphone as if summoning an army of sympathizers or gossip mongers to her side. In that moment, a chill ran down my spine. I realized this would be more than a mere exchange. It would be a campaign to push me out, possibly to banish Bella from her home. I thought of the other neighborhood kids who loved Bella, how she was their friend, always ready for a game of fetch, never judging or much caring about breed standards. Suddenly, a siren echoed across the adjacent blocks. An ambulance, bland and bureaucratic, made its way through the street, contrasting sharply with the vibrant activity in my driveway just moments before. However, that siren felt like an omen of sorts. The night wouldn't end without consequence. Karen's battle has begun, and I was determined not to let her bulldoze through my life, my space, or my right to have Bella at my side. Little did I know, this confrontation would spiral into an all-out war over more than just my dog. It would challenge everything about how I viewed my home and my neighbors. As I returned my gaze to Karen, I steeled myself against the impending storm. The evening was only just beginning. That Saturday morning began like any other, the sun shining through the windows, filling my small living room with warmth. I had just poured a cup of coffee and was watching Bella chase the sunlight across the floor when a sudden thud jolted me from my reverie. I glanced down to see a thick envelope slid under my front door. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach as I crouched to pick it up, almost afraid of what it contained. I tore it open with trembling hands, my heart pounding, and the message took me by surprise. Karen's menacing letter was scrawled in her dictatorial handwriting, demanding that I permanently remove Bella from my home or face fines that could ruin me financially. My breath hitched as I scanned her words. It was a brazen threat hiding behind the guise of community regulations. My mind raced with disbelief. How could she aim to destroy my life over something so trivial? Bella had brought so much joy into my world, providing solace during my darkest hours. Emotion twisted in my chest, and I grabbed my phone, my fingers itching to dial a friend, anyone who might help me process this unwarranted attack. However, the familiar sensation of isolation washed over me, reminding me that the very community I'd longed to be a part of was now turning its back. I knew I had to confront Karen and the HOA head-on at the upcoming board meeting, prepared to defend my home and my dog. The thought of facing her was daunting, like standing before the executioner, but I couldn't back down. As the day wore on and the hours caught up with my anxiety, I decided to take Bella for a walk. The gentle afternoon sun bathed everything in a golden light, but there was no escaping the darkness gathering in my mind. It felt as though the neighbors were watching me, their judgmental stares piercing through my back. Karen's stony, baleful glares haunted me, and I could almost hear her voice echoing in my head, insisting that my sweet Bella didn't belong in this exclusive community. I walked past the meticulously trimmed hedges and rows of pristine houses that seemed to loom over me like a jury waiting to pass judgment. Each clattering bark from Bella sent ripples of discomfort through me. I could feel the whispers behind the curtains, a smear campaign brewing, with Karen orchestrating the perfect storm. What would happen when I showed up at that meeting? Would anyone stand by me, or would I be met with silence and contempt? The mere thought made the pit in my stomach twist tighter. Later, I sat on the edge of my bed, combing through the HOA bylaws and digging into what rights I had. I had to be prepared, to know whether I could fight back. Karen would come armed with her own version of facts and bylaws, but I had to match her ferocity. Sleep felt impossible in the face of chaos, and I lay there wondering about the outcome. It wasn't just about Bella anymore, it was about my dignity and the fight against entitlement. Dusk began to settle over my neighborhood as I rehearsed lines in my head, trying to gauge how best to phrase my words for maximum impact. Would I appeal to their compassion or focus on the absurdity of Karen's demands? My heart raced with each new scenario I played out, but despite my internal chaos, I forced myself to take steady breaths. I could not allow her to belittle me, to reduce my battle to a simple pet ownership dispute. The evening slipped away, replaced by a heavy silence that echoed around my home. After the sun dipped down and darkness encroached, I threw myself onto the living room couch, waiting for the clock to inch closer to the meeting time. Each ticking second felt like a countdown to a battle. I knew what was at stake if I lost. It wouldn't just be Bella's future on the line. It would rip apart the fabric of what I thought was a supportive community, one that would care for each other amidst the mundane troubles of life. As I lay there, flicking through social media as if the answers might be hiding in plain sight, a fire flared within me. I would confront Karen, not just for Bella's sake, but for every creature, every person she had hurt with her entitled attitude. Tomorrow, I would step into the lion's den unchained, ready to reclaim my right to belong. It was war, and regardless of the insecurities clawing at my heart, I was going to fight back. And more than that, I was going to win. In my desperate bid to clear my name, I organized a neighborhood barbecue, hoping to earn neighbors' support and foster a sense of community. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow across my backyard, the laughter of children playing and the enticing scent of grilled burgers filled the air. I carefully placed yard games and set up tables, adorned with simple, cheerful decorations. I wanted to transform my space from a battleground into a sanctuary of camaraderie and trust. The warmth of that late afternoon was the perfect backdrop for a gathering, a way to lure my neighbors into seeing the fun and joy Bella brought to our lives. The backyard was bursting with laughter as families arrived, plates piled high with food, and conversations flowed. I felt a swell of hope as I watched the kids, including my own, splashing around in the inflatable kiddie pool I had set up a little oasis of joy amidst the tension that hung over our lives like a storm cloud. Neighbors who had previously turned their backs now smiled and chatted with me, a hint of warmth creeping back into our interactions. Perhaps this barbecue would be the salve to our frayed relationships, a way to show that living together didn't mean we had to agree with every single rule enforced by Karen and her HOA. But just when I thought the evening's magic might ease the palpable tension, the rustle of leaves and the sharp sound of heels pounding on the deck shattered the moment. With her arms crossed tightly, like a caged animal ready to launch itself at prey, Karen arrived, her bitter expression cutting through the gathering's laid-back vibe. The laughter died down, like a record skipping, as her steely blue eyes scanned the yard, taking in the sight of the kids splashing with unabashed joy. With a voice dripping with venom, she wasted no time launching into an onslaught against our fun, the very air growing heavy with her outrage. "Do you think this garish kiddie pool is acceptable?" Karen bellowed, pointing an accusing finger as if summoning a jury of neighbors to witness my supposed transgressions. "This is a violation of our HOA guidelines. It's an eyesore." Her words sliced through the warm air, radical and loud, each syllable heavier than the last as they echoed through the yard. I felt my heart sink, and the ugly red heat of embarrassment igniting on my cheeks as the eyes of my neighbors shifted uncomfortably between us. Something inside me broke a little as I watched their expressions morph into a mix of confusion and discomfort. I stood frozen, a mix of disbelief and fury surging through me like a river at high tide. It was one thing to receive her vile letter, but to have her barge into my own home, ready to ruin a gathering meant to mend fences, felt like a personal attack. "Karen, it's just a bit of fun for the kids," I protested, my voice wavering as I felt a wave of trepidation rush over me. The adults murmured among themselves, their earlier camaraderie now overshadowed by the drama unfolding before them, adding weight to the conflict that felt like a sinister game orchestrated by Karen herself. With an all-too-satisfying smirk, she continued her tirade, detailing every rule I had supposedly violated while my neighbors stood round and gawked like spectators at a train wreck. "You could face significant fines for every infraction I've noted here, and I don't see how you could think this is a family-friendly environment with such blatant disregard for our guidelines." Her voice rose, unleashing a wave of tension that shocked the remaining laughter right out of the air. Each threat she uttered weighted the atmosphere further, tension crackling like static before a thunderstorm. Could this be the moment that ruined my already shaky foundation? I could feel my chest tighten with anger and want for reassurance, glances exchanged among my neighbors, as her words hung heavy in the air like smoke after a fire. I was scrambling to reach beyond my embarrassment and make sense of this fiasco. How is it possible for one woman to wield such power over our lives and bind us all to her whims? I glanced at the children's bewildered faces, briefly catching Bella's gaze, her ears perked in concern. Suddenly, a single voice broke through the silence, soft yet firm. "I think we all just want to enjoy the evening, Karen," said one of my neighbors, trying to soothe the tension that had erupted like a volcano. It was a flicker of rebellion against her authority, a beacon of hope for what had initially seemed like an insurmountable challenge. The front lines of my battle thinned, albeit for a brief moment, yet I could feel the weight of Karen's glare shift to this neighbor as she bristled, reminding us all who she truly was, a daunting figure cloaked in entitlement. Still, as she stalked away, the tension did not evaporate completely. It lingered, clinging to us like an unwanted guest. I took a deep breath, internally vowing not to cower, not to be a victim in this cruel tale she spun as she sought to exert her power. This barbecue was built for camaraderie, but the true battle had just begun. Tomorrow would see me standing much straighter, bolstered by the laughter of children that echoed in my ears, resolved to reclaim my space, my home, my life, and Bella's place beside me. Would my neighbors rally together against Karen's iron grip, or would they cower in fear of her wrath? As the HOA meeting commenced that evening, I walked through the door with the confidence of a lion, clutching tightly to the petition I'd gathered from half the community, their signatures like a shield against the battle I feared I was about to wage. The room buzzed with chatter, a cacophony of neighbors' voices, mixing with the smell of stale coffee and the faint whiff of citrus-scented cleaning supplies that hung in the air, covering up whatever collective dread lingered from previous confrontations. I spotted familiar faces, the Johnsons, with their two rambunctious kids, Mr. Kelly, a retired firefighter with a kind heart, and, to my dismay, Karen, the self-proclaimed HOA tyrant, sitting at the front with an air of smugness that radiated from her to the rest of the room. There was no turning back now. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves while trying to maintain a semblance of composure as I approached the microphone. The moment I cleared my throat, the murmurs quieted, and I gripped the edges of my folded papers. Tightly, my heart pounded, reminding me that I was not just fighting for myself but for Bella, who lay curled up in the back of the room, a picture of innocence amidst this storm. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice ringing with an unintentional tremor that quickly settled into confidence. I could see nods of encouragement scattered throughout the crowd and raised eyebrows in Karen's direction, hinting that she was not the only one with influence in this room. I began outlining the support I'd received, referencing my petition, and emphasizing the need for unity against Karen's increasingly hostile demands. Bella is a beloved member of our family, and I think we can all agree that our community thrives when we embrace each other's joys, rather than tear them down. I could hear a few murmurs of agreement, but my heart sank as I watched Karen's smirk deepen into something akin to a grimace, the kind that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Just as I thought I had momentum, Karen seized the floor, her voice as sharp as her tailored blazer. "Excuse me, but I have some news that might change your mind entirely about this so-called beloved dog," Karen announced, her tone chilling as the room fell into an uneasy silence. Every eye turned to her, my stomach sinking as I anticipated the explosive detail she was about to unleash. "I've secured a restraining order against Bella." Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud, the tension in the room suffocating as disbelief washed over me and murmurs erupted around us. My heart raced as I struggled to process her declaration, the sound of my own pulse drumming in my ears, drowning out the gasps of shock from my neighbors. How could she do this? The idea that she could weaponize the law against my sweet pup filled my mind with anxiety. Karen continued her tirade, outlining her claims that Bella posed a dangerous threat to her manicured lawns and pristine flower beds, conveniently ignoring the myriad of posters my children had made to promote pet-friendly environments. Could this night get any worse? As I stood in disbelief, half of me imploring the people around me to rally in our defense, my eyes caught the glimpse of empathy in my neighbor Margot's eyes, who had lived next door to Karen for years. Margot's gentle expression told a story of understanding. She knew exactly what kind of person Karen was beneath that harsh exterior. In that moment of tethering hope, a flicker of rebellion surged through me, igniting a new determination to expose Karen's deceit for what it was. Fueled by the sting of her accusations, I stepped forward again, clenching my fists as I leaned closer to the mic. "And with respect to that restraining order, how many of us have actually ever seen Bella do anything remotely aggressive?" My words pierced through the disbelieving air, urging anyone willing to stand with me to speak up. Through the hushed whispers, I willed the neighbors to remember Bella's gentle nature, how she charmed everyone from children to their countless pets, how she brought laughter instead of fear. However, as the anxious weight of silence enveloped the crowd, I felt a chill creep back in. Could Karen's vendetta have consumed even my allies, silencing their voices? A part of me wanted to scream for help, to cry out against the injustice she wielded, like a sledgehammer against my fragile hopes. But then, in a rising tide of voices echoing from behind me, I felt the swell of community regain its footing, small pledges of support, murmuring encouragement around the room. Could it be? Were they rising to my defense? Just as I prepared to unleash a wave of defiance, one brave neighbor finally stood up, her voice steadied. "We cannot allow one person's whim to dictate our shared enjoyment and love for our pets." Her words ignited the crowd, an outcry of solidarity swelling like a pulse, drumming against the walls of our meeting hall. Sure, my heart still raced with anxiety, but the weight of doubt began to fade, replaced by an unexpected strength, and the echo of Bella's joyful bark pervaded my mind. This battle was not over yet. The night of reckoning arrived, filled with tension and repressed rage, as the community gathered once more. The atmosphere inside the dimly lit hall was charged, like the moments just before a storm breaks, and I could feel the palpable weight of anticipation settling on my shoulders. With each creak of the wooden chairs and the rustle of anxious neighbors, whispers echoed my shared purpose. To protect Bella, I took a deep breath, reaffirming my resolve. This was not only a battle for my beloved dog, but for every voice silenced by Karen's reign of intimidation and manipulation. As I presented my evidence, articulating the support I'd gathered through the petition, a steady hum of agreement began to ripple through the room. My neighbors leaned forward, their expressions transforming from curiosity to conviction as I detailed how Bella, with her gentle disposition, had won the hearts of many, including children who would run up to her with laughter as she wagged her tail in enthusiastic greeting. How could they let Karen, whose only talent seemed to be causes for complaint, dictate who deserves to live freely in our community? My words resonated, filling the air with a sense of unity that sparked hope within me. Then, amidst the communal murmurs of support, a brave neighbor from the back stood up, her voice ringing clear and strong. "Not one of us has seen Bella act aggressively." She leveled her gaze at Karen, who squirmed slightly at the sudden spotlight. "In fact, the only nasty behavior I see is coming from one person in this room, and that's you, Karen." Gasps rippled through the crowd, a collective sense of unease settling over the assembly as the tide of public opinion began to shift. I saw nods among familiar faces, faces that once wore worry and apprehension but were now replacing it with righteous indignation. The tension continued to mount, and I felt my heart race with both fear and exhilaration as I instinctively motioned for attention. Just as I envisioned a moment of victory, another neighbor, Margot, stood up beside the first, revealing the depths of Karen's past, specifically her mistreatment of animals, including the abandoned pets that had once lived in her shadow. Karen had 2 cats she adopted from the shelter, and do you all know what she did? She abandoned them when they weren't convenient anymore. Margot's voice shook with anger as she shared her testimony, simmering with the potency of the truth. With each word, the anger against Karen amplified through glances exchanged among the crowd. A chorus of gasps and angry murmurs surfaced like waves crashing against the shore, each one a testament to the profound disbelief that swirled around us. How could someone like her dare to place the blame on a loving, innocent dog when her own history bore a darker stain? With this crucial revelation echoing in the air, I stepped forward once more, buoyed by a newfound determination. I stared directly at the HOA board members, living witnesses to Karen's crushing power grabs. We can no longer sit in silence as she pulls us apart and seeks to destroy our community spirit, all masked under her guise of authority. My voice boomed, emboldened by the unity behind me. The shift in momentum felt exhilarating, electrifying even, and as I caught sight of Bella, who had propped herself up, tail wagging, it was as if she sensed the spirit of this fight. As the board members deliberated, a hush fell over the assembly, and I felt my heart thudding in my chest like a marching drum. For the first time, I truly believed in the power of collective voices raised against oppression. The room simmered with unresolved tension, but it was a tension built on the weight of truth and shared experiences rather than fear. I could feel the crowd lean in, the energy building as whispered conversations transformed into loud affirmations. Ultimately, the HOA board delivered their verdict. They unanimously voted against Karen's demands regarding Bella. A wave of relief and triumph washed over the crowd, who erupted into applause and cheers. I stood there, heart swelling with joy, as Bella sprinted to me, barking as though she too understood just how monumental this victory felt. For the first time in a long while, I no longer felt like a victim in this battle. I felt like a victor, someone who had faced down an oppressive regime and emerged not only intact but stronger. As I watched Karen's furious, betrayed features twist with disbelief as she gathered her belongings, stripped of her bitter command, a strange sense of satisfaction washed over me. This wasn't just about my dog anymore. It was about reclaiming our community from her cruel grasp. Justice had been served, and in that moment of clarity, filled with hope and resolve, I knew we had all emerged victorious. What an incredible transformation it was, to stand together as a community united against a common threat.